Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to a closer look at Swell, intimate conversations with Asian immigrants and children of Asian immigrants who turn their stories into song. I'm Lisa Gold, A4's executive director, and a quick accessibility check. I'm a Hapa, half Korean, half white woman with dark hair pulled up in a bun, wearing a black V-neck sleeveless top, a vote necklace, and an I voted sticker. I am thrilled to be presenting tonight's program in celebration of Immigrant Heritage Month on election primary day. Fun voting facts: Asian Americans currently make up 4% of the American electorate and about 15% of the New York City population. 38% of New York City residents are immigrants. And in voting precincts with large numbers of residents of Asian descent, turnout for voting was up 20% last year. So go Asian American voters. Okay, well, tonight we're here to celebrate Swell, which is a new music song cycle written by 10 composers who are immigrants and children of immigrants, with each song describing some aspect of the composer's experience. And it debuted live and online earlier this year in March in partnership with Here, who are our great theater friends over on 6th Avenue and Dominic Street. Half the songs in the song cycle were written by Asian American composers with Filipino, Indian, Japanese, and Taiwanese heritage, comprising both first and second generation immigrants. So tonight we will be presenting 3 of those compositions and then another 3 next week on the 29th, in part 2 of this program. So I am really delighted to be joined by Swell's producer and lyricist, Melissa Tian, and Swell's musical director, Tian Huing, who will facilitate tonight's conversations with the show's composers and singers, Joshua Sardenia, Carolyn Chen, Justine F. Chen, and Haiting Chin, who are also here with us tonight. But before I share their introductions, I need to do some housekeeping and a few announcements. So for those of you who are familiar with A4, you know that we're dedicated to ensuring greater representation, equity, and opportunities for Asian American artists and cultural organizations through resource sharing, promotion, and community building. So tonight's program is an example of how we like to promote and elevate work that is meaningful to our community and which allows us to have deeper conversations about our identity and other Asian American related issues. So as I said, I'm going to share a few Zoom protocols and additional announcements before we start. We are recording this program for our YouTube channel, and we'll be sharing it later on Facebook as well. If you have questions, there is a Q&A icon, at the bottom of your Zoom menu. So just click on that icon and type your question into the box, because there will be a Q&A session at the end, and we'll do our best to answer all of your questions. We also have closed captions available via Rev. So if you would like to enable captions, you should see a CC icon also in a box at the bottom of your Zoom screen menu that has the words live transcript below it. So click on that icon to enable the captions. Okay, so first off, I would love to thank Priscilla Sun, who is our programs and communications manager, for always being great at organizing all of our programs. If you are interested in sharing what you're hearing tonight, please share on social media and use the hashtag A4Swell. Be sure to tag us. We love spreading the word. And very important, please, we are asking you to do us a huge favor and fill out a post-event survey. Excuse me. We always try to improve our programs and shape them to be more relevant and of interest to you. So your input matters. If you want to share an idea for a future program or just give us feedback, just let us know. So we'll share the link in the chat box, and we'll send you the survey after the event as well. So we have a number of upcoming events. This is hopefully our last crazy busy month in a while. Unfortunately, we have to cancel tomorrow's open kimono conversation with Pixie Lau and Angela Y, which was scheduled to take place at Photographiska. But we will reschedule that, and I will let you know as soon as we have a new date. But Pixie's show is on view through September, so check it out. This Friday, Friday afternoon at Here, again, our A4 virtual resident artist, Mary Tess Zurbano, is going to be presenting Moving Mahal, Decolonizing Tarot, which is a 1-hour socially distanced theater performance featuring an interactive video projection of original tarot card images that she's created with another A4 virtual resident artist using RFID card technology. The event is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but I believe it's at capacity. If you're interested though, and you want to get on the waiting list, Priscilla will share that link with you to get on the waiting list. Futures Ever Arriving, which is our Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month exhibition, which is being presented with our Pearl River Mart friends, closes this Sunday, the 27th. It is at Chelsea Market in Chelsea. Run, go see it. It's fantastic. And if you pick up an exhibition map at Pearl River Mart, you can get a discount on the delicious foods at Pearl River Foods. On the lower level there, they have kimbap and bubble tea and other deliciousness. Also this Sunday, we will be in downtown Flushing for a new video project created by A4 virtual resident artist Betty Yu. So at 8:30 in the evening, we're going to be projecting We Were Here, Unmasking Yellow Peril on the side of a building, Ming Seng Tower at 13682 39th Avenue. Such a Queens address. So this projection is a culmination of people's stories of immigration, labor, discrimination, and resilience that Betty collected in Flushing, Queens over the past 3 months. And I want to give a very special thanks to Council Member Peter Koo and his team for support of this program through the Cultural Immigrant Initiative. Priscilla will share the link on how to learn more about that. And then next week, on Tuesday, the 29th, same bat time, same bat channel, we will present a second evening of Swell. So come back and you can hear again from Melissa with other artists. Justine will join us again, Justine Chen, Lena Papich, Alak Kumar, Tian will be back, and Kamala Sankaram. So come back again next week if you like what you hear tonight. On Wednesday, July 14th at noon, we are presenting our second Grow with Google workshop. This is for artists, and it's called Grow Your Audience with YouTube. So if you want to figure out how to grow your presence, get more followers, get free swag or whatever happens to popular YouTubers, sign up. It's free. Priscilla will drop the link for that one too. Town Hall is back. Town Hall is back on Tuesday, July 20th at 6:30 to celebrate film. July and August are big film festival months, and we want you to know about all things AAPI film. So again, check that out. So even if you just want to, pitch a project or meet other creatives, it doesn't have to be film related, but it's a great opportunity to get a sense of what's happening in the AAPI creative community here in New York. On Friday, July 30th, we are super thrilled to be presenting a project with Restart Stages at Lincoln Center. We're presenting The Memory of Water, which is a new performance featuring Ravish Momin as Sunken Cages, and another A4 virtual resident artist, Migiwa Migi Miyajima and her quintet. So tickets are free, but there's a lottery. So they will be available starting 2 weeks ahead of the date. So on July 16th. Again, you can check out our website or the Lincoln Center site for more details. And finally, for all of you artists out there, sign up for the $5,000 City Artist Corps grants. the first application cycle closed this morning, but there are 2 more cycles, and the sooner you get your application in, the better your chances are of getting that money. So the next application cycle opens Tuesday, July 6th at 10 a.m. and it closes on July 20th at 10 a.m. So A4 and other organizations are going to be holding information sessions and workshops to answer your questions. Feel free to email me if you have questions. The application is very simple. Trust me, do it. It's $5,000. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. We are A4, we're going to take a little programming break in August, so we're probably only going to have a couple of events because it's tiring. So as always, thank you to our supporters at Capital One, Con Edison, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, in partnership with the City Council, the New York State Council on the Arts, with the support of Governor Andrew Cuomo and the New York State Legislature, the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tiger Foundation, and so many generous individuals like you who make our programs possible. And I want to give a special shout out to Council Member Margaret Chin and her excellent staff. There's a reason why she's in District 1, number 1. They're so great. So thank you for their support of tonight's and next week's program, also through the Cultural Immigrant Initiative. And if you want to be among our list of supporters, or you want to test our text to donate function, text the letters A, the number 4, and donate to the number 202-858-1233. And you can make a donation via Venmo or Apple Pay or just a regular credit card. Okay, so now I would like to offer a brief land acknowledgement because before Zoom times, we would be meeting in the A4 offices on the unceded lands of the Lenape and Canarsie peoples. But since we're meeting virtually, I would like to share a digital land acknowledgement written by Canadian theater artist Adrienne Wong, as we are all occupying very different physical spaces. Since our activities are shared digitally to the internet, let's also take a moment to consider the legacy of colonization embedded within the technologies, structures, and ways of thinking we use every day. We're using equipment and high-speed internet not available in many Indigenous communities. Even the technologies that are central to much of the art that we make leave significant carbon footprints, contributing to changing climates that disproportionately affect Indigenous peoples worldwide. I invite you to join me in acknowledging all of this, as well as our shared responsibility to make good use of this time, and for each of us to consider our roles in reconciliation, decolonization, and allyship. And now I would like to briefly introduce tonight's participants. We have Melissa Tien, who is a playwright, lyricist, librettist, and producer. She has produced and contributed lyrics to Swell and is a resident playwright of New Dramatists and has an upcoming production at Jack in Brooklyn this fall. Tian Hui Ning is the musical director of the Victory Players and Whitesnake projects, and he's premiered works by numerous composers, including multiple Pulitzer and Rome Prize winners. Carolyn Chen is a composer who has made music for Supermarkets, Demolition District, and The Dark. Her work has been presented in 25 countries and has been supported by the Berlin Prize, the Fulbright Program, ASCAP's Fred Ho Award, and Soros Fellowship for New Americans, among others. Joshua Sardenia, I think, wins the award from coming from the furthest distance, who is zooming in from the Philippines. Joshua's composition work embraces a broad range of styles and influences, spanning orchestral, chamber, and vocal music, as well as musical theater. He is a member of the BMI Lehman Engel Workshop and an alumnus of the Juilliard School, the Peabody Institute, and the Young Suto Conservatory of Music. Composer Justine F. Chen has been commissioned by New York City Opera, New York City Ballet, Juilliard, American Lyric Theater, Jack Quartet, and Opera America, among others. She has received numerous grants, and she has a new work about her mother's family called Seven Sisters. Hai Ting Chin is an American mezzo-soprano whose eclectic career includes music from medieval to new and a range of theatrical styles from performance practice to wildly experimental. She is the creator of Science Fair, an opera with experiments, a stage show of science set to music, and Astronautica, Voices of Women in Space. It's a visual album of songs based on the words of women astronauts. I love that. And then also, so tonight's program will feature ASL interpretation by Jody Prysock and Lorelei Martinez by A Total Caption. And ASL interpretation of the songs is provided by Jose Gomez, Justine Rivera, and Kathleen Taylor in consultation with Alexandria Wales. So that's a lot, enough of me. Take it away, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. I mean, as Lisa told you all, Swell is a song cycle made up of 10 songs. And tonight we have 3 of the composers with us. We also have one of our singers. We're very lucky to have them all in one place, even if it's virtual. Everyone's very busy because things are starting to open up all over the place. I would like to give you all a little bit of background in terms of how Swell came to exist. When I began to produce it, I had no idea at all what I was in for. And this actually seems to be a trend in my art making. I kind of come up with an idea and I think, wow, wouldn't it be cool if something like this existed? And then I pursue it. And the more I pursue it, the more I realize just how difficult it is to bring something like that into existence. So I will go back to 2018. A friend of mine had taken me to a new music festival in Brooklyn at a venue called Roulette. And I love new music. I love all kinds of new music. I was listening to everybody. I was enjoying it thoroughly. And then there was a woman who came on stage. She performed a song that was about her family, about the women from her home country. She was from Haiti, and it just filled me with all kinds of emotions that I was not prepared for. And I left that festival thinking about this song, thinking about this composer, and I had just begun writing lyrics in addition to writing plays, in addition to writing other sorts of theatrical texts. And I thought, you know what I want to do? I want to work with composers who write about their home countries that are not the US. I want to write with immigrant composers. And I just started this idea, you know, in me to look for immigrant composers. I thought, well, we're in New York City. What better place to start looking for people like that? And I kind of just thought about who I knew, who might know people that I could work with, people on the same level as I was artistically, people who would be open to an idea like this, people who would be on board with me getting together a bunch of composers and inviting them to write a song and collecting them and presenting them to the audience. It was much harder than I thought it was going to be. One of the first people that I asked was Carolyn. And Carolyn is somebody that I knew actually because she is the wife of a mutual friend. And I had not, I think at the time, Carolyn, did we meet in person yet? When I first asked you to work with me on this project?
I think you were staying over. I think that's how we met and talked about it. It was kind of all at once.
It was all at once. So it was like the very first time I think I stayed at your house.
Yeah.
It was also the very first time that I asked you, hey, why don't you come on board with this crazy idea that I have? I have no idea how I'm going to fund it. I have no idea what I'm going to do. But all I know is I want to get a bunch of composers together who identify as immigrants and children of immigrants. And I think I gave everybody full reign from the beginning, you know, in terms of what to write about and what music style. And I'm kind of curious. I'm always curious how it seemed to you when I approached you with this idea.
I thought it sounded great. I mean, I think we talked a bit about our sort of the shared experience of growing up as the children of immigrants in the US. I grew up on the East Coast and in a like very white neighborhood, and so everybody always assumed that I was from China, even though I had never been there. And I guess I do have ancestors there, but my parents are actually from Taiwan, but no one's ever heard of that. Some people have heard of Thailand, but no one's, heard of Taiwan in where I grew up. And so I think I spent a lot of time growing up thinking about imagining the place that I'd never been to. And then I think we talked about actually going for the first time.
Yeah, right. I remember that conversation because I too am from Taiwan, and I actually didn't go. I think I went much because you had gone back to Taiwan when you were a bit younger compared to me. Because I think the first time I went as an adult was just 5 years ago, and then before that, I think I had been maybe 2 or 3 years old. So I don't remember that time at all. But my strongest initial memory of landing in Taiwan was realizing that I had no idea what Taipei was going to look like. And I didn't know even how to get from the airport to where I was staying with my family. And it's strange to go back to your home country and not know these things.
Yeah, it's a different world. And conversely, I think we talked about when I went to China for the first time, or maybe it was the second time, but I did a Fulbright in the middle of grad school. And so I was there for a year. And when I got there the first night in the hostel, one of my roommates was so excited to meet somebody from the United States. And she had all these urgent questions to ask me, like, did I think Angelina Jolie was pretty? And why did Brad Pitt choose her over Jennifer Aniston? And how come I wasn't wearing any makeup? Like, did all the people in the US like actually look like this? And so I realized that she, because of all of the media that she's inundated with, she had spent a lot of time thinking about what it would be like to live in the United States as well. And that was true of a lot of the friends that I met when I was living there.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to me, that we exist on the same planet, and yet there are countries that we feel we're so far away from that all we can imagine of them is what we see through media. And I think that was the thing that I wanted to hang on to, that concept of people on opposite sides of an ocean trying to imagine what life is like in the other person's country. And I think that is what sparked the original idea for the song, because in all our conversations, that stayed with me. And what I will say before we start playing the song, that I really liked the idea of having two people who had similar heritage, but one of them was Asian American and one of them was actually Chinese. And they're trying to imagine what life is like for the other person. And one of them is traveling to China for the first time as an adult and discovering, or about to discover, the difference between what they have in their head and what is actually happening in real life.
What I see, what I see, and what is told to me, dare I monitor the screen, the other side of the sea. Where a cousin waits for me, might as well be a wilderness. Until recently, I thought that it might be hard to get a glimpse of your beautiful country, hard to understand such a beautiful country. Soon I will, cousin arrives from there to here, how but familiar. Soon America will appear. I wonder as he sneaks by my window, what will this sweet rain? What will she expect? Will she feel at home? 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 I fear that life there is not like life here. What is life there? Is choice as vast as unending? Is choice as vast as unending? Unending, as I've heard it to be. As I've heard it to be. I hear people laughing in our common tongue. They are laughing aloud. Here we're above everyone. Neighbors, police, the government, identity, gods, people laughing aloud. On a brain, buzzing wise, on the roof, I will never understand. I dream I'm across the sea. 3 strokes, we are speaking of water, 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 speaking of water. More the beginning of infinity.
Oh, it was so beautiful. I love watching this video of what was actually a live performance. It still gives me chills. It was months ago, and I still love watching it. I would like to point out that was 2 singers. We have Mimi Hilaire, who's our soprano, and I-Ting Chin, who's our mezzo, who's here tonight with us, as well as the violinist Ellie Toyoda that you saw in that piece. I think that I'm interested in talking about Joshua's piece because what it has a corollary to Carolyn's piece, because we were just listening to a song about two people who are each on the other side of the same ocean and imagining what life is like. And Josh here actually embodies both of those perspectives, because Josh immigrated from the Philippines to the US to pursue being a composer. Isn't that right?
Yep, that's right.
And how long ago were you in the States, and where are you now?
How long ago? Well, I was between between 2011 to 2020, I guess. I was in the States for a total of 7 years or so, and until 2020, just before the pandemic hit. For a number of reasons, I decided to move back to the Philippines, and have been here ever since, with really no clarity so far as to where I'll end up in the future, whether that means going back to America or somewhere else. So I'm kind of in that. So while I am like technically not an immigrant at the moment, I'm still very much in that, immigrant mindset, I guess.
Yeah.
Not being at home where I am.
Yeah. Wow. This is something that's actually reflected in your music, because Josh uniquely, there was a workshop of Swell before this online presentation, and for the original workshop, Josh had written a different song. And then when I asked all the composers whether they wanted to continue with the original song they'd written for the workshop or write a new song, he was the only composer that told me that he wanted to write something new. And each of these songs, to my delight, had to do with his immediate situation as somebody who did not feel at home where he was. And the first song was a song about him being in the US. And now this is a song about you being in the Philippines. So fascinating.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I mean, they're both very different songs, speaking to very different situations. But yeah, both, funnily enough, about the feeling of not being at home where I am. The first one was about not feeling at home where I was, even though I was, even though my life was in the States. But by that time, I'd been in the US for several years. My whole life was there, but still that feeling of being a stranger. And then now I'm in my home country, and still the feeling of being a stranger is what persists, and it's what that song, what the new song is about.
It's great. It's great. I would love to play the song for everybody, and I just want to remind everyone that the ASL interpretation link will be dropped into the chat as well.
The sun that shines here is the same as the one in my former world. Same moon at night. Even the air is the same. But at some point over the ocean it might become a hurricane. And this place takes all the impact. You only ever see one side of the moon anywhere in the world. Constellations are the same too. Some the same. People are mostly the same wherever you go. They just look a little different. But oh, the pace is so different indeed. There are no seasons. I miss the weather changes. And what is this language, both strange and familiar, which I understand completely, but I cannot think in? It's not the same. It's not the same at all. I miss the cold. There is no fall or winter. The days are much longer. The nights are much sweeter. I've seen it all before, so it might as well stay dark. The sun that shines here is the same as the one in my home. For what would I go back? For what would I go back? For what would I go back?
What a powerful performance. That was Ricardo Rivera, our baritone. Really, really reflects, you know, the inner turmoil that Joshua is wrestling with, you know. And we have Tien here, who is our music director for Swell. And Tien, do you have some insights into the musical qualities of the songs? They're so varied.
Well, you know, I wanted firstly to start saying to Joshua that I really loved your song, and you know, and it's like, you know, being a parent, I love all of these songs, but I also really love this song. And and Joshua, like, you know, there was just you probably had no way, and we had no way of knowing that you wrote a completely new song for this edition of the event, that you know, this would come to be. But I had at one point in time been out in the West, if you will, and then I was kind of forced by circumstances to be back in my native Singapore for 7.5 years. And I can totally, I remember that one night where I know the Philippines is a lot bigger than Singapore. I drove around the entire island about 3 times just because I just was so restless and I had nowhere to go, and I couldn't, and that was one of the things that I loved about arriving here in the US, was that I could literally get in my car and like just say go somewhere. I'll head west, you know, I'll head north, and it will be days before I reach the ends of it, you know. And so very, very exciting. Thank you so much to all three of our composers for the music. And I think, you know, this Melissa, you wanted me to talk about the kind of like the different styles of the music that was written here. And I think, you know, it's also interesting for our audience probably to know that these songs were primarily not written with Zoom and online performance in mind. I see everybody immediately moves. And I mean, that's like the first thing that struck all of us, I think, you know. And usually when I do a new work, I try to get in contact with the composers, maybe even before we start rehearsal, because I know there is all this kind of, you know, depending on the relationship of the composer to their work, you know, it's a little bit like telling them that their children need to be dressed properly or something, you know. It's very sensitive. You know, and it's always so good to build that relationship ahead of time. And it was one of the greatest joys of this project, was meeting all these wonderful composers. And actually for me, professionally, outside of Asia, it was the first time I had ever met such a great gathering of Asian American talent and Asian talent here. And it was very exciting to hear the stories and the thoughts and the feelings expressed through the music. And that was something I felt that I could really, really identify with. And then now I had the difficult challenge of trying to realize it in this online platform. So I mean, like, you know, I remember calling Carolyn up and calling Justine up and going, you know, this song on this internet platform is sounding a little strange, you know, because, for example, you know, it was so challenging with Speaking of Water, because the original conception of it was that the two singers would be spatially displaced within a theater, and that you would therefore have been able to hear the sounds coming at you, and you would be able to hear the text that they were singing separately and individually coming to you. And such is the wonder of the human ear and the human mind, that you'd be able to perceive both separately and concurrently at the same time. Then comes Zoom, and the fact that most people are going to access this probably on some kind of a mobile device without high quality audio, without it being split into headphones. And so one of the first things I discovered talking to our wonderful sound engineer, John Robertson, was the fact that it was going to be mastered in mono, which means that these spatially displaced voices are now going to be like this, on top of each other. And it became a real challenge technically for us to find a way for the singers to be intelligible and for it to be actually something that made sense artistically. So Carolyn, I remember calling you going, all right, give this a chance, please. We're going to try something really strange with your piece. And it had to do with the kind of what we were doing with the background of the music, to create a fake acoustic so that there was at least a bed for these very two discrete vocal objects to rest on. And part of that was creating a certain amount of reverberation, and a part of it was also creating a certain kind of sound aesthetic so that it reflected the kind of dreaminess and the kind of, you know, almost surreality of the text, of this separation in the water. And you know, and it was, I almost wish that your camera was turned on, Carolyn, as you were watching this just now, because it's like, you know, this is the performer's greatest fear. I hope the composer doesn't now hate me. So, I mean, Carolyn, Melissa, would you mind, like, if I ask Carolyn about like what she thought about the interventions we made to the piece and how it kind of interacted with her original artistic vision?
No, not at all. I'm fascinated to know this as well.
No, I thought you did a beautiful job. Everyone, I mean, it sounded amazing. And I think the kind of creation of these separate spaces for the instruments and then the singers separately made a lot of sense for kind of getting an overall picture. I think when I was just watching right now, I was kind of looking at the layers of captions also. And I think having the visual design of seeing their faces kind of speaking to each other was a really nice choice. I don't know, I was really fascinated by just kind of watching the different layers of visuals going on in addition to hearing their voices.
Thank you. Yeah, I found it very, very fascinating watching this video production side of it too, because it's like you got to see like, you know, the actual calligraphy of the words and what you're referring to. And so that visual aid was so helpful, especially for those of us who aren't fluent in Mandarin. We could still see the physicality of and the visual of the street three strokes that were forming the kind of idea of water in there. It was just so beautiful. So thank you for that. I think that was really interesting. And for Joshua, there was this. We didn't. I felt like the challenges presented by your piece was quite different, in the sense that I think we felt more comfortable. There was no such kind of panning disparities that we had to resolve and so on. But the question was, what do we do to fully realize the potential of being on this online medium? So there were dynamics and tonal colors, timbral colors that Ricardo and I explored using that you probably won't always use on stage. So I wonder what you think of that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I didn't quite know what to. Well, in the first place, I didn't know what to expect with the performance in terms of like technically how it was going to be managed. So I didn't, like the things you brought up in rehearsal, like dynamics and that sort of thing. It didn't even occur to me because I was so focused on like the piece is very rhythmic, and that was on purpose because I don't know, like I was thinking in terms of, like of being able to sync with each other and being able to keep time with each other. I thought, oh, I'm gonna make this piece very rhythmic, and that might help ease the the performance of it. So that's what I was thinking of. And then you brought up all these things about, just the timbral, possibilities of the piece, and yeah, and which was why I was more than happy to let you to kind of like hand off that work to you.
And that's kind of one of those things, isn't it? Because you think that that's going to be helpful, and it turns out to be everything but in
Exactly.
syncing something together. And I know I'm supposed to say a few words about Justine's piece as well, but I actually I would refrain because I really love this piece, and there are some very interesting timbral colors that we're doing in there, and it'd be so interesting for you to hear how the different kinds of voices, because one of the nice things about this production, of course, is that you have actually the same four singers. So you've heard how they sound like in Carolyn's piece and Joshua's piece, and then they morph into very different creatures for Justine's a song. And I think it's a real mark of their wonderful artistry that they could do that. And I have to say, we had some incredibly flexible and kind singers working with us. Over to you, Melissa.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to play this song for you. If we could cue that up. And you can check the chat for the link to the ASL interpretation. Oh, that's always one of my favorite pieces because it features all the singers. We saw Mimi Lair, we saw Alok Kumar tenor, we saw Haiting Chen or mezzo, we saw Ricardo again. It's really beautiful, beautiful work.
And just for everybody's knowledge too, that piece was pretty much the piece that we finished a lot of the programs with too, you know, and I think we just felt so moved by it, the music, the words, and for me it always gets me. There's this moment in the piece where the singers are coming to the end of the word belong, and they're doing this amazing vocal thing where they're kind of like almost like slowly just changing the color of their voice. They're moving to the NG sound. Everything is resonating. It's so warm, and it comes together. And there's this sweet spot where the way that they're handling the placement of their voice, the vibrato, it just clicks, and I just give goosebump effect. It's so good. And you know, and here to talk with us about this also is Haiting. And welcome, Haiting.
Hello.
You know, I think, you know, I remember the first time we talked about this, and firstly, you know, for all of us, it was like the first time we were singing in a very long time like this, like in ensemble, and at the same time was so tantalizing because we weren't at any time actually physically together, and we had to, with a piece like this, with 4 different voices needing to come together, we needed to really finesse it together. And you had and I keep telling people it's like the opposite of what they teach conductors to do when we do this. It's that normally conductors, we just show our hands, and we're supposed to not talk so much, you know. We're supposed to be able to communicate the magic of gesture and, like, you know, somehow receive inspiration, and then like it just magically falls together. And I feel like, you know, this whole Zoom process kind of took away the kind of, you know, kind of the kind of smoke and mirrors about it. It became this very, very, you know, intense discussion of every single microsecond that we're going to handle in this piece. Haiting, would you talk a little bit about that, how it felt like to do that?
Sure. And I also want to just lay out for the listeners here that what we were actually experiencing, each of us in our own houses, in our little quarantine boxes, was this. We had strung up green screens in some room in our house. We had wired ourselves with tiny little mics that had a wireless receiver that was being fed into a sound mixing bit of software. We had previously, all the instrumentalists had recorded themselves, and those ensemble parts had been mixed together, and then using that as a kind of karaoke, each of us had recorded our own parts, but not to be played later. We had recorded our own parts so that the other people in the ensemble could hear us and sing with us as best they could. And then each of us had this thing that, what were you calling it? It was a -1, like a karaoke -1, so that we were each listening to a collage of all the other people pre-recorded. So we were not even getting to listen to each other live and sing with each other. We just had to reproduce as best we could the recording that we had previously made while singing with a recording that everyone else had previously made, and try to imbue it with some kind of live performance energy. And then all of that data was being fed to the sound mixer, who was trying to take these signals from across the globe and sync them up together with a video that was being generated using our green screen images and then piling us on top of each other. So any little inconsistencies or sound quality problems, or I was laughing about this earlier, that the problem of Asian hair, which I think this crowd will appreciate very much. Asian hair is very reflective, and it picks up the green from the green screen, and then the program takes out part of your head when it puts you on the background. And I noticed that no one else in that shot had that problem, but half my head was gone. So there you go. Those are our experiences. We were enclosed in our little green screened space, all alone, hearing pre-recorded sound and trying to give something that would give the audience a performance experience.
Yeah, you guys did such an amazing job. I was so confused from maybe the first conversation I had with Melissa about even what to expect in rehearsals. She was like, "How's it sound?" And like usually when composers come into a room, the only thing you want to know is that they know when they're supposed to, like, you know, when things are going together and when they're not. And none of this was synchronized. She's like, "But how does it sound?" I'm like, "Well, they're not together." And she's like, "But it'll be together later."
For once, it wasn't our fault.
she kept explaining, like, it'll be someone else is going to sing it. I'm like, who? Really? Do they know how to read me? Like, I didn't know anything about anyone. And then Tian is so sweet. He's like, "Hey, Justine, I was thinking we can do this and this and this." And I was like, okay. I think it wasn't my normal conversation with a conductor before, you know, but I know he was a pro at this technology. So I would, you know, and then, oh man, you guys, Tian, you know, you can tell he's such a sweet, kind person. Everything that comes out of his mouth is so open and loving. And just, I think, was I giving you good answers, Tian? I don't even know. I was like overwhelmed with the kindness. Again, this is not normal practice for like, you know, when there's like someone telling you something that they need about your music. Usually it's rare for it to be just like coming with like beaming with goodness and sunshine and like there's content in there too. It's amazing. Tian, you're amazing. But the singers, thank you for explaining what you guys were doing, because I was like, I don't know, like, what are these recordings? Wait, is it live? Like where are there so many recordings? I could not. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it was really amazing, wasn't it? Because I mean, and that was the thing. I still remember talking to Justine about this. It was like, and she was like, "It's not together." like, did you hear this? The soprano is just like 1/8 note off, like the whole time, and like, you know, and I think, you know, particularly there is the you know, it's much less the case now, but there are still folks out there who struggle, right, with some of this, you know, contemporary notation and getting things just in the right place. So I can imagine the faith and trust that the composer has in us. Like, and I'm saying, trust us, it's going to be together. Let's talk about all the other things. And I used to have a teacher, Helmut Rilling, who would say to me, Tian, when it's like this, you know, when you don't have, you know, when it's difficult, there are 3 things that you have to hold on to, and they come in this order. You have to be together, and then you have to be singing the right notes. And then the last question is that, do you sound good together? And in this case, we're skipping the first 2 and we're going straight to the last, you know, hoping for faith. So difficult. So thank you, everybody.
I have to say that everybody really rose to the occasion. I don't think any of us, you know, have training in this. You know, I mean, the training we had was really the last 1.5 years, you know. All of the training we had before was working with people in the same room, you know, in a space that was going to feature the audience, and it was all going to be live just in one room. And so this is like, it was at one point it just felt like uncharted territory, you know. I mean, especially for me, I'd never produced something like this, had no idea what I was getting into, trying to explain to the composers what it was, you know, as best as I could, while I was learning it myself, you know. But I think that a lot of this honestly has to do with just like the professionalism that comes with people who've had a life's worth of experience, you know, performing, making music, composing, working with other musicians. I mean, I'm always fascinated actually by people's origin stories. You know, I mean, I know that Carolyn and Josh and Justine, as well as Haiting, and also Tian. I mean, I think all of you have remarkably different origin stories, and I would love for you all to share how you all came to music. And anybody who's willing to just jump in, I would love to hear this.
I'll go first. I feel like, so I'm going to start with my mother, just because I feel like that's where it kind of started. My mother fell in love with music when she was very little, but it wasn't really given to her. But she managed to go to like the best conservatory in Taiwan. And then she came over to the US, and I have an older sister. She had my sister. My older sister is a phenomenal pianist. And she started going to Juilliard when she was like 7, maybe. And so I was like three-ish. And she started composing pretty soon after, because the theory teachers encouraged composition. And so I started piano. I feel like it was not a spark of inspiration, but it was just like, this is what we do, right? Mom plays piano. My sister plays piano. I'll play piano. And then I decided also to choose a different instrument, but she started composing, so I was composing. It just felt very much like, you just follow your older sibling a lot of the time. That's how I started. And I've continued. Education was really important to me, and so I teach music too. It feels like it's the thing that makes me go forward and helps me move forward.
Carolyn, how about you? You were smiling when Justine was talking about, when your siblings or your parents do this, you just kind of follow their footsteps.
Yeah, so I was supposed to be an electrical engineer because that's what my dad does, and it's objectively the best thing to do. So I had never really disagreed with him up until I went to college. So I tried really hard. And I think I had declared a music major in order. I'd taken piano growing up. I never had any intention of becoming a performer. I just don't have the personality, I think, for it. But I wanted to keep playing. And so I declared a major to qualify for a scholarship for the lessons. And then because of that, I took music theory, and there was a final assignment so I got hooked kind of in the middle of college. I had never really written anything before that point. And it took a lot of working through to be able to say out loud that this is what I would like to do, or that I would like to pursue. And I think both for me and my parents, I had to square away, the fact that there was no kind of stable career in the future, and also that it seemed kind of distant from social justice, or kind of working directly toward improving anything in the world. And so my mom, I mean, all the way through my PhD, would call every once in a while and say, it's not too late to go to medical school. And she was right. It's still, it's never too late. But that's sort of, I kind of took a roundabout path.
And Josh, you talked about, I think that you and I, in just casual conversation, we talked about how you played piano also when you were young. Is that right?
Yeah, I took piano lessons. It's not that unusual, even here, like a lot of children take piano lessons when they're young, and they kind of just grow out of it. But in my case, I didn't, and that was also what sparked like wanting to write music, because I saw writing music as an extension of playing an instrument, and I would later be surprised to find out that that's not always true for everyone. But in my case, it was, and my influences at the time were, the piano music that I was learning, like Mozart, Beethoven, all of that, and that's kind of what got me on the path to composing until I got the opportunity, and until the time came to decide what I wanted to do with my life. And as one does, well, I know music, so I guess I'm gonna do that. And then just went to school for it and kind of just got on that whole path.
Hi Ting, how old were you when you started with music? This is something I actually really don't know. I'm so curious about this.
I was 4 when I was put in a children's chorus as basically one day a week childcare, among many other things. But I like Carolyn, was supposed to be a scientist. My mother is a mathematician. Actually, my Jewish mother is a mathematician. I'm Hapa. My father is Chinese American. My mother's Jewish. And whenever I say that my mother is a mathematics professor, everyone assumes that she's the Chinese one, but it's not true. So my Jewish mother encouraged me to be like her, a woman in STEM, and I kind of fell into music as a profession really in college, as I was kind of figuring out, but I wasn't really into any of the sciences that I was taking, and I just applied to be a double major, and then I just more and more like shuffled over to the music side, and as was mentioned in my bio, and later in my career now, I've come back to an appreciation for science from the music side, and I've started making things like my show Science Fair and my trio show Astronautica, using the words of astronauts as a way to give back to the scientific community and to celebrate their work, and especially the women in sciences. I've been making music and shows about that. So all of it coming back together.
I love that. I love how you can take two seemingly disparate fields and join them together in that way. It's so beautiful. And Tian, how about your origin story?
Like I think my earliest memories of this goes back to a point where I can barely remember. So I'm about 5. And because my sister told me my favorite episode of Transformers was about to appear on TV, I was so excited, I leapt off the high side of the slide instead of sliding down because I thought I'd be faster. And my leg caught on the stairs and I landed and basically completely turned my elbow into a pulp. And so here I was, 5 years old, stuck in the hospital. And this is what I remember. I don't really remember the stuff before. I remember being around 5 in a hospital, and I got really bored. And the hours were moving incredibly slowly for a hyperactive 5-year-old boy. And I got bored. And so what I did was I started singing. And I just went through the entire repertoire of nursery rhymes and everything. And of course, I was in the children's ward. So before you knew it, the entire ward was singing these songs to pass the time. And so we kind of became known as like the music ward, because like then all these nurses and doctors would like kind of peek in through doors to watch this, like, because we're literally all lying down and we're like in slings and whatever, and we can't really move. And like, I don't realize this until much later in life. The doctors were teaching me how to write my left hand because they weren't sure that I would be able to write my right hand when they were done, like, so it was pretty serious. And that was actually a point before I actually had any music lessons. So it was just, and it's kind of a funny thing because like then, I grew up in Singapore, and this is not the crazy rich Asian Singapore. This is the Singapore that had like, like my grandmother had just put concrete like floors down for the first time ever, like 2 years ago, because we were walking around on dirt floors before that. And and we had thin zinc roofs and thin kind of like, wooden walls and chickens running around. You name it. It's like that kind of what we call a kampong, kind of like in the village kind of a thing. So, like it is the furthest thing from a person's mind when they're growing up in that situation to think that one day you could be a professional musician. That profession does not exist. So it just doesn't exist. I think reaching the point of at the end of my high school was like, I looked around and like in Singapore, there wasn't a music conservatory to go to. It stopped at high school nationally. There was nothing left. So, you had the choice of, going to the Philippines, going to Japan, going to Europe, going to America. And that's like, that gets increasingly more expensive and more impossible for an island boy, So I think, it was almost like always studying music was like against the odds. Like, you know, I just happened to really love it. And, you know, like, thankfully somebody showed up who was willing to teach this boy for like not very much money. And that's how we started, you know. So I just feel so lucky. And I think, you know, like listening to how Justine talks about it, and I'm just thinking about the past, is like, because none of this was ever expected. None of this was you know, supposed to work out. And so it's just also lucky. And so I feel like the most lucky person on earth, you know, luckiest person on earth, because it's so amazing to be able to do this.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that all of you ended up making music and, you know, being a part of this project. Thank you so much for being part of Swell and also being part of this panel.
Thank you, Melissa, and everyone, Carolyn and Tian and Joshua, Justine, Haiting, our great interpreters. Such great, Melissa, this is wonderful and just incredible to think that this came together this way in a pandemic. Unbelievable. It's just really, I learned so much and I'm just so impressed with all of you. And I can't wait for next week when we'll do it again with different composers. But again, thank you all. Audience, I'm sorry we didn't have any questions, but if you want to send us questions, feel free and we'll answer them next week. But hopefully we'll see you all on the 29th. So thanks again, everyone. Fill out the survey and have a great evening. Thank you.